Hi everyone, it's Katrina. Number 10. The Aya Sophia. The Aya Sophia in Istanbul was built 3 different times by the Eastern Roman Empire. The Aya Sophia that still stands today is the most recent iteration, constructed shortly after the fall of Rome in 537 AD. It was originally an Orthodox church, but when the Ottomans conquered Istanbul in 1453, it was transformed into a mosque. It then remained a mosque for the next 500 years, give or take a few decades. It was later transformed into a museum, but once more it became a mosque in 2020. The building itself is massive and beautiful, but it's full of secrets and superstition. In the Middle Ages, people believed the well in the center of the main hall was able to cure disease. People would come from all over the world to bathe in the well's waters, hoping that it would cure whatever ailed them. There is also a column within the Aya Sophia known as the Weeping Column. Even in the brutal heat of summer, the column stays mysteriously wet. Faithful believers think the moisture is from the tears of the Virgin Mary herself. And just like the water in the well, the column supposedly holds healing properties. To this day, people visit the Aya Sophia and try to rub the moisture from the column all over their bodies. But by far the most exciting mystery about this place is that of a potential underground chamber. No crypt has ever been found at the Aya Sophia, which makes the experts wonder what's hidden beneath the structure. If it started as a cathedral, it must have had a crypt, but nobody has ever found what secret chamber may be lying underneath the main floor. And now for number 9, but first, it's shoutout time! I want to give a big thank you to Elizabeth Santos and Eli Mitchell for supporting this channel. Thanks, guys! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like these. Number 9. The Breastplate of Good. Underneath the ruins of an ancient Bulgarian fortress, archaeologists found a breastplate. The breastplate, which is a fragment of a piece of armor, dates back 1,100 years. According to Ivailo Kanev with Bulgaria's National Museum, an inscription on the breastplate might be the oldest example of Cyrillic text ever found. Kanev says the text was written on the breastplate as a magical protection spell. The inscription, written in primitive Cyrillic, was meant to safeguard whoever wore the breastplate from trouble and evil. The breastplate was fashioned sometime between 893 and 927 AD, during the rule of Tsar Simeon I of the Bulgarian Empire. This was a powerful time for Bulgaria, as they launched military campaigns against the Byzantine Empire. Finding Cyrillic on the breastplate is exciting because it's helping researchers trace the language back to its origins. Scientists already know Cyrillic was used in Russia and parts of Eurasia, and that it was developed in the Middle Ages, but it's never really been known where the language came from. So it was a bit of a shock to find the oldest written Cyrillic text on an ancient breastplate, one that could have been worn by Bulgarian royalty. Number 8. The Lost City of Tenea. For centuries, Tenea was nothing but a myth. It was a legendary city known only through Greek mythology and ancient historical texts. The city comes up in the legend of Oedipus, the king of Thebes, and in the story of Archias of Corinth. In the 2nd century AD, geographer Pausanias wrote that Tenea was founded by Trojan prisoners who escaped their Greek captors around 1100 BC. But in modern times, historians never believed Tenea was a real place. For all they knew, it was just a name and a story. That all changed, though, in 1984, when local villagers on the Italian island of Sicily came across some ruins by complete accident. The villagers found an ancient sarcophagus while trying to dig themselves a well. But even after the discovery of the sarcophagus, it wasn't until 2013 that real excavations were done here. It's only been in the last few years that scientists have revealed the true scope of what they now know to be the city of Tenea. Miraculously, it wasn't a myth after all. Excavations have revealed a lot of different things here, including copper coins, an iron key, Roman ceramics, public buildings, and so much more. Dating the over 2,100 coins unearthed in the ruins proved the city lasted at least until the 6th century AD. Archaeologists even found an entire necropolis. This was obviously a major center of commerce for centuries, but whether it was truly built by the refugees of Troy is up for debate. Scientists also don't know what happened to the city or how such a magnificent place could vanish into obscurity. Number 7. The Gods of Orion. Almost every ancient civilization in the world recognized the constellation Orion and told stories about it. In the Americas, across the Middle East and Africa, in Egypt, and in the deserts of Australia, Orion has always been a central figure in cultural myths and legends. But why is that? Some modern researchers like Freddie Silva and Graham Hancock have suggested Orion may be far more important to human history than we realize. Many modern historians believe the gods of the ancients were real beings. Seeing as how so many early civilizations told stories of their gods coming to Earth from Orion, it stands to reason this may have been something that truly happened. Freddie Silva believes an advanced race of giant beings came from the constellation Orion. He also thinks the fact that they were giants is hugely important because of ancient myths. Almost every culture in the world wrote of how the planet was occupied by giants before there were humans. There was also a bit of overlap when the giants and humans lived together. The Bible even says how the Nephilim, giant abominations, lived on the planet prior to the flood. Most civilizations also have a flood myth, and it all dates back about 12,000 years. According to these guys, if you look at all the myths together, not individually, they paint a very clear picture. Giants came from space, lived briefly alongside humans, and then left after a flood event. We, humans as a species, are the direct result of the giants from Orion and primitive humans merging their DNA. At least that's the theory, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Number 6. The humans of the Great Basin. Oregon's Great Basin is home to some of the oldest archaeological discoveries in North America. In 1938, archaeologist Luther Cressman uncovered the oldest known footwear in the world at Fort Rock Cave. These aren't shoes, but rather prehistoric sandals worn 10,000 years ago. Some more recent discoveries, not of footwear, date back even earlier. Scientists are now starting to think the Great Basin was one of the first places permanently occupied by people in North America. In 2002, archaeologists from the University of Oregon discovered a 14,000-year-old coprolite in the Paisley Caves. Coprolite is a fancy word for fossilized dung, and 20 years later, scientists did DNA testing on the coprolite and identified it as human. This was direct evidence of people living in North America a very long time ago. It challenged the prevailing theories of when people arrived in the West. Between the footwear and the fossilized feces, scientists are positive people have been living in caves in Oregon since before the dawn of civilization. But how they got there and what they were doing is still an unsolved mystery. Number 5. The Controversial Museum. One of the most controversial museums in the world is located in Peru, in the small town of Ica. It was created by Professor Javier Cabrera Darquea, who was born in 1924 and died in 2001. The museum is controversial because it contains artifacts that scientists don't think are real. Darquea, a professor of medicine, not of natural history, was in Peru when a local farmer gave him a stone tablet. The tablet showed the image of a fish that went extinct before humans ever evolved. The professor believed the stone to be authentic and took it as proof that the human timeline is wrong. Then, over the next several years, the professor discovered over 100,000 more stones. They soon became known as the Ica stones, and they are in the late professor's personal museum. Many of these stones have pictures of things that simply don't make sense, like images of flying machines, humans riding around on dinosaurs, and people performing medical surgery in ancient times. It's truly insane. However, mainstream archaeologists all agree the professor was lying. Javier Cabrera Darquea was likely a fraud. He could have had these stones carved by locals who were ordered to keep it secret. Then he used them to gain fame, wealth, and personal attention. Even though he's been dead for 20 years, his museum still attracts people from all over the world. He may be a purported fraud, but his fraudulence has never been proven. What do you think, real or a hoax? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Number 4. Cleopatra's Tomb. Archaeologists are on the hunt for the lost tomb of Cleopatra VII. Underneath a majestic temple in the vast ruins of Taposiris Magna, there is a whole world. Archaeologists recently unveiled a tunnel running deep beneath the temple. It was found in 2022, with archaeologists calling it a geometric miracle. Kathleen Martinez from the University of Santo Domingo was the one behind the discovery. Kathleen and her team uncovered the subterranean passageway 43 feet underground. The tunnel is about 6 feet tall and stretches through almost 4,300 feet of solid sandstone. It's an engineering marvel that's even more impressive than it seems. It may look like just a tunnel, but this thing took a significant amount of work to create. Ancient Egyptian engineers must have been bending over backward to make their creation work. The only thing that's remotely comparable to it is the Tunnel of Eupalinos, which was carved beneath the Greek island of Samos in the 6th century BC. You're likely wondering what Cleopatra has to do with all this. Kathleen has been working in Taposiris Magna for almost 20 years, and her primary goal is finding the remains of Cleopatra. The biggest issue is that many parts of the city are submerged underwater. Coins have been found here bearing Cleopatra's likeness. Scientists know she had a strong connection to the temple, which was dedicated to the goddess Isis and her husband Osiris. But nobody knows where the tunnel ends or what it was used for. Still, finding it has given the archaeologists hope. Somewhere underneath the partially submerged city could be a tunnel leading to the tomb of Cleopatra, and maybe even her lover, Mark Antony. Number 3. Mystery petroglyphs. Archaeologists in Sweden recently discovered some unbelievable rock carvings and are trying to make sense of them. Around 40 petroglyphs were found that display a myriad of things: people, ships, weird patterns, and animals. The petroglyphs date back about 2,700 years, and they were carved into the face of a massive granite rock that was once an island. The rock was the only piece of the landscape here that stuck out from the water 3,000 years ago. When the petroglyphs were made, the whole place was flooded. This means whoever made the paintings had traveled to the rock by boat specifically to draw on it. Either that, or they'd walked across the water when it was frozen. Researchers nearly missed the drawings because the rock was covered entirely in moss. But because these scientists were already searching for petroglyphs, someone had the bright idea to remove the layer of moss. That was when they found the perfectly preserved drawings underneath. It was like peeling the carpet off a hardwood floor to find someone had drawn a mosaic on it. It's unclear who created the petroglyphs or what they mean, but scientists say they were made by someone smashing a rock against the granite face. And while it's not known for certain, the petroglyphs may have been used as proof of ownership. A small tribe may have lived here and marked their territory with pictures on rocks. But of course, that's only a theory. Number 2. The Legend of Hugh Despenser. Hugh Despenser played a major role in English history, and yet most people don't know who he was. Hugh was born around 1287 AD, and he was the son of the Earl of Winchester. He rose to a prominent position among British nobility after he was knighted in 1306 at the Feast of the Swans. He married Eleanor de Clare that same year, connecting him directly to King Edward I. Eleanor was the great-granddaughter of the king, and with one simple marriage, Hugh managed to get himself in line for the throne. King Edward II became the next king in 1307, and immediately Hugh started trying to be his friend. By 1318, he was the royal chamberlain and part of the royal court. But his greed was a thing that couldn't be satisfied. He used his position to collect lands and castles. He even took Wallingford Castle in Berkshire away from Queen Isabella. And by 1321, everyone except King Edward hated Hugh Despenser. But who cares about something like that when you have a dozen castles at your disposal? Hugh and his wife were briefly exiled at the behest of Queen Isabella, likely because she wasn't pleased that he'd taken over her castle. But then they came back and regained control. Hugh Despenser was such a greedy guy that the Queen fled to France and made plans to invade England. When the army of mercenaries arrived in England, the nobility were so sick of Hugh Despenser, they joined the mercenaries to dispose of the king. Hugh and the king tried to flee with the entirety of the treasury, but unfortunately for them, they were captured. Hugh Despenser was hanged in Bristol on October 27, 1326, and King Edward was imprisoned and forced to give up the throne. Nobody knows what happened to him, only that he showed up dead shortly after under mysterious circumstances. Number 1. The Great House. Tetroctl, also known as the Great House, was built around 990 AD by the Puebloan culture of the American Southwest. Construction was finished by about 1070, with the structure taking up almost 3 acres of land. The Great House had a whopping 400 rooms, but modern archaeologists don't know what any of them were for. Some academics have suggested the Great House was used for ceremonial purposes. Others think it was just a giant house, and all the rooms were like individual apartments. It may have been used for political meetings, or it could have been a home for priests or for pilgrims. But for all historians know, it could have even been a palace for whatever royal family lived in the area. The landscape around Tetroctl was heavily wooded 1,000 years ago. The entire area in New Mexico was a forest, and archaeologists have found evidence that the Puebloan culture cut down every last tree. They cut at least 16,000 trees down just to clear room for their great stone house. After they did this, the whole region was left infertile. Then, when the rains lessened around 1130 AD, it was impossible to keep growing crops. And so everybody left and likely headed south, although that's not proven. Scientists can't even figure out what the Great House was used for, never mind where the Puebloans went after abandoning Tetroctl. Have you ever visited this place? What was it like? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up for more. See you next time. Bye!